Hello and welcome to episode 21 of the Footy with Fletch podcast. Today we are lucky to be joined by Brenton Sanderson, who played 209 AFL games at three clubs. He was also the senior coach of the Adelaide Crows between 2012 and 2014, where he coached 69 games. Hello, Brenton. Thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Fletch. Yourself?
I'm very well, thank you. It will be great to talk to you today. Of course, you played at three AFL clubs and grew up in Adelaide. What was it like playing at Adelaide, given that that was your first club in your hometown?
Yeah, it was pretty surreal, Fletch. It was very early on it was the first year that the Crows came into the competition in 1991, and I was only 16 years old. So I was part of the squad. You know, obviously I didn't play until the following year in 1992. But yeah, to come straight out of high school and then be on an AFL list and playing for a new club into the AFL, and obviously it was huge at the time in Adelaide. So yeah, it was obviously a massive thrill.
It was great that you were a part of that first year of the Adelaide Crows. Now, as a child, were there any footballers that you idolised and wanted to play like during your AFL days?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was very lucky. I grew up in a football family. My dad was a good football player in the Adelaide Hills, and I obviously idolised him growing up, and he was my favourite player, I guess, when I was a kid. But we only really knew of the VFL, obviously, then, and obviously the AFL came in, and the Crows started in 1991. So I used to look up to the players that played in the SANFL, in the South Australian Footy League, and I guess the ones that we loved as kids were the ones that then went and played across in the VFL. So the guys, I was sort of the age when there was a big group of South Australians went across and played for Carlton. So Stephen Kernahan, Craig Bradley, Mark Nayley, Peter Motley, these were the guys that were, superstars in the SANFL. Then they went across and played for Carlton. And that's when I guess it really sort of hit home to a lot of the kids, I guess, growing up in South Australia that this was achievable. You could reach the pinnacle of football in South Australia and then potentially play in the VFL. So I was very fortunate to have those idols growing up.
They are some superstars of the VFL, like you mentioned, Stephen Kernahan, probably one of the greatest Carlton players of all time, or he is definitely up there. What do you remember from your debut playing football in the big time?
Do you know what, though? I can't remember much about my debut for the Crows. It was round 4 against the Brisbane Bears at the time, but I can't really. I don't know. It was just one of those things that happened, and I just got swept up in all of it, I guess. And we had a win. I kicked a couple of goals. I played half forward, but the build up and the game, I can't really remember much about. I mean, it was a long time ago, 1992, but. Yeah, at the same time, I think for a young teenager to make an AFL debut and all of a sudden be playing in the highest competition that's attainable at the time for a kid, it was quite surreal. And I look back now, obviously, with very fond memories. But from that actual day, I can't really remember much.
Now, you mentioned that you played half forward in your first game at the Crows. You went on to play half back at Geelong, which was your third club. What was the difference between preparing for a match as a forward compared to preparing for a match as a defender?
Yeah, well, I guess it was very different. I mean, the game's changed so much, half forward, you pretty much stayed at home, like you stayed in your front half. We see now in the modern game, half forwards are required to push all the way back deep into defence to help the defenders. But very much back in the time when I was playing in the sort of mid-90s, late 90s as a forward, you were there pretty much just to kick goals. You didn't really put pressure on. You maybe had a few tackles, but you were there just to kick goals, really. the midfielders played in the midfield and the defenders played in defence. And then I guess the game started to change. The game started to evolve. And yeah, when I got moved into the back line and when I started my career at Geelong, very much became one of those running halfbacks, you know, and we see those players a lot now. You know, that's almost now where you set up your team offense is from your high defenders. You know, that's where your run and punch comes from. So that's where the game started to evolve for me. That's where I played my best footy, and yeah, I was fortunate enough to play most of my career at Geelong as one of those high defenders.
Like you mentioned, the game definitely has changed so much. Now, during your time at Collingwood, you lived with Nathan Buckley. What was it like to live and be a housemate with Nathan Buckley?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, we played against each other in the SANFL. So, you know, Bucks won the McGarry medal, it's called over there, which is the best player in the competition. He won that as an 18-year-old, I think, and then he obviously went up to the Brisbane Bears and he had a season up there before coming to Collingwood in 1994. And I got traded from the Adelaide Crows to Collingwood in 1994. So I only had 1 year at Collingwood, and obviously Bucks went on to be a player and a coach there for the next 30 years. But we had 1 year and we lived together in North Balwyn. And I guess what I take away mostly from that, besides a great friendship, was, you know, seeing how the best players in the competition prepare. So, you know, super professional, did everything he possibly could to get the best out of himself. And I really took those learnings, I guess, or that experience and that knowledge with me when I went to Geelong. I got traded again. After 1 year at Collingwood, I ended up at Geelong, had another 11 years there as a player, but they were really important years for me. Well, that year at Collingwood was a really important year for me. It really taught me how to become a professional AFL player.
Now, of course, you also went on to be an assistant coach at Collingwood for 5 years, and Nathan Buckley was the senior coach. So you got to work with Bucks again. What was that like as well?
Oh, it was great. I mean, the opportunity to work in a relationship with one of your closest friends. And, you know, we got obviously so close to winning the 2018 premiership, which would have been an incredible memory for us as really good friends. But yeah, it was definitely a special time, those 5 years, while you have, you know, some really good wins and some really tough losses. And there's so many challenges in coaching, but yeah, the opportunity to work with one of your closest mates was a fantastic chance that I just couldn't say no to. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that.
You were very lucky to be able to work at Collingwood and Adelaide in the coaching helm. What was it like when you were first appointed as the Adelaide senior coach in September 2011?
It was awesome. It was a really good experience, and I really enjoyed my time at Adelaide. And unfortunately, I only had 3 years there as the senior coach, but incredible experience. Really enjoyed coaching that group. We got really close to a grand final in my first year. We lost the prelim final by less than a goal, but you know, I've got some great memories of my time there at Adelaide, and you know, going back to my home state and being around my family, and obviously trying my very best to ensure that you know, I got the best out of that group, but didn't go to plan, unfortunately. And you know, I would have loved you know, more opportunities there, but unfortunately it wasn't to be. And but like I said, I still look back on that 3 years with some really great memories and a fantastic opportunity to coach the team that I first ever played for.
Now, in 2012, as the senior coach of Adelaide, Adelaide were 5 points away from making the 2012 grand final. That must have been really tough. And what was that game like as a coach, and what was it like after the match with the players?
Yeah, massive letdown, obviously, to get so close. And we hit the front with a couple of minutes to go. Graham Johncock kicked a goal, which put us in front. And then Sirioli kicked a goal, which got the Hawks back in front and obviously got them through to a grand final. But yeah, fantastic opportunity to coach against Alistair Clarkson in a prelim final. And, you know, the sort of lead was going both ways. And, you know, I just was so proud of the effort and the intensity that our players threw at the Hawks. And It was Michael Dowdy's last game for the Crows. So, to get so close to a grand final in his final season, and we just got him up, and he looked at the team, and I said to him, have a look at this group of young men today. They threw everything they possibly could to try and get us into a grand final, and we just fell short. So super proud. Like I said, you watch that game back now and think what could have been, but that's our industry. That's footy. There's only one winner in the finals, and unfortunately that just wasn't our day.
Now, in 2013, do you rate one of the best moments in your career as both a coach and a player when you came back to win against North Melbourne when you were behind by 30 points? And that question is from one of my listeners as well.
Yeah, that was an incredible game. I mean, that was a game which was out of reach, to be honest. I think I can't remember exactly. We might have kicked the last 7 goals of the game, I think. And it was just an incredible experience for our playing group, but also to our coaches and staff that day, because the game was gone. It was out of reach, and it was one of those famous ones where there was less time on the clock than goals that we needed to score. So even with 3 minutes to go, we needed 4 goals to win, and somehow we found a way to get that job done. So yeah, huge buzz, incredible thrill. And then, like I said about that prelim final, you look back and you think, what could have been. You watch that game back, that last sort of 10 minutes, and you think, how are we ever going to win this game? But yeah, obviously we found a way. It was incredible.
It was an incredible match for the Crows. Now, do you think that it was a brutal call from Adelaide for you to be sacked from your role as the senior coach, given that you had 39 wins and 30 losses from your 69 games?
Oh, listen, it's one of those things, and football and sport in general, whether it's AFL or any other international professional sport, there's decision makers who are charged or given the responsibility to make decisions which they feel are going to help the club both in the short and long term. So ultimately, I missed out, and Phil Walsh was obviously was given the role after myself, and he was having a really great time initially and in that role. So I mean, maybe it was the right decision, you just never know. But like I said, there's people and there's boards that are put in place, obviously, to make decisions that they feel are going to help the footy club in the short and long term. So it wasn't to be for me. Obviously, I carry some scars from that experience, but I still love the industry. I'm obviously still involved, and as I said, I really enjoyed coaching both at Geelong, Adelaide, and also at Collingwood.
Now, if the opportunity arose again, would you be a senior coach again, Brenton?
Not right now, Fletch. I just think it's one of those ones where I've got a young family, and it's just a brutal industry to be involved in at that level. There's just so much exposure that you have to actually absorb, and there's so many challenges that are put in front of you that I just don't think at this time in my life that I would be able to handle it and give it everything that I possibly could. You never say never. So, I'm 47 years old, and it's very much a young man's game now. There's a lot of good young coaches around who are going to make great senior coaches. But at this point in my life, Fletch, I'm really content at doing what I'm doing. And I can't see being a senior coach in my short-term future.
Hopefully that could happen again in the long term. Now, you were coached by some great coaches, including Lee Matthews, Gary Ayres, and Mark Thompson, to name a few. What was it like to be coached by 3 of these fantastic football coaches?
Yeah, unbelievable, Fletcher. It was one of those things where it's just the right place at the right time, and getting coached by some of the absolute greats. I'm so fortunate, and a lot of players go through their whole career and they don't even get the opportunity to be coached by one of those Hall of Fame coaches. But all of them left an incredible mark on my career as a player, and also to sit alongside Mark Thompson, in those premierships at Geelong. And then, of course, Chris Scott, 2011, his first year as a senior coach was a premiership for Geelong. Being involved in that was pretty surreal as well. So I've had a long industry. I had a long career in the industry. I've been around 3 premierships and I think 5 grand finals. But I feel very fortunate to be involved with the clubs and the coaches that I've had exposure to. It's been great.
Like you mentioned earlier, those guys definitely were legendary coaches. Now, did you always want to be a senior coach after your playing career finished?
No, I didn't. I not that I fell into coaching, but I had some options. I've got my pilot's license, and I was contemplating trying to go for my commercial license, and maybe try and be a pilot full time. And I've got my commerce degrees, and there was that option to become, involved in the finance industry as well. But like I said, I guess footy's been my passion my whole life, and I've obviously loved the industry, and didn't win a premiership as a player, and I think that's probably what sort of weighed a little bit towards being a coach, was that I wanted another opportunity to be involved in a premiership. So yeah, I decided to be a coach. Really loved being an assistant coach, had that success at Geelong, and then the opportunity came to become a senior coach. So I was, I think, 38 at the time. I was still quite young in coaching terms, but I felt like I was ready. I felt like I wanted to do it. And so through everything I could at being a great senior coach, but I guess history will show it wasn't going to be for me. But yeah, that's just the way it goes.
Now, you mentioned that you are a qualified pilot. What made you want to be a pilot?
I don't know. It's one of those things where I've always been, curious about the aviation industry, and the way that, I don't know, I was one of those kids that always had my hand out the window, feeling the physics of what makes airplanes lift off the ground. And I like every kid, you sit in an airplane and think, how in the hell does this thing get off the ground? So I was always curious about flying. And then when I finished my commerce degree, I decided to give it a go. So I went and had a couple of lessons down at Moorabbin Airport, and I was hooked. It was something that I really wanted to do, and I've had some really great experiences being up in the air, and it's something that I'd love to continue to do.
It sounds like it has been a great experience for you. Of course, you were also the AFL Under-18s Academy head coach from 2015 to 2016. What was this role like for you, and who were some of the players that you had the opportunity to develop whilst working in that role?
Oh, that was awesome. I only did the role for 2 years, but it was sort of the who's who at the moment of those great young leaders in the AFL. Guys like Jacob Wiedering and Sam Walsh. They came through the academy. Darcy Parish. So you get the opportunity to work with the best young talent across the country, and that's from the age of about 15 to draft age to 18. So like I said, there's so many great young players that I've had the opportunity to work with as young men, and hopefully shape their careers and prepare them as best we can to become great AFL players. So yeah, like I said, it's pretty much all those guns that are now sort of in their early 20s, heading towards mid 20s. I had the opportunity to work with as they were coming through their championship years, when they were representing, Victoria or New South Wales or WA, and then obviously they became part of the National Academy. So that was a fantastic opportunity, and something that I really enjoyed.
It would have been a fantastic opportunity for you, and hopefully Sam Walsh will make a full recovery from his syndesmosis injury. Now, what do you think has been the most important lesson that you have learned from your time in AFL football?
It's a feedback industry. You get feedback every day, and it's not always good. So, you get told a lot that you're not good enough, or that you're not capable of playing at the level. So you have to develop a pretty thick skin, but you also have to develop a really good, strong resilience to overcome setbacks and challenges. So I guess when you look at my journey, 3 clubs, being sacked as a coach, you have to ensure that you can, dust yourself off and keep moving forward. You can't remain too bitter in the industry. You've got to ensure that you're always looking for ways to get better and keep challenging yourself to improve. So I think you learn that from a pretty young age. And that's, one of the harsh realities of footy is that as a 18, 19-year-old, you're going to get told a lot that you're not good enough. So that's probably the biggest lesson that I learned from a pretty young age.
That is a really important lesson there that you have learned. Now, you suffered a few injuries during your career. Were they some of the more difficult moments in your playing career?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a brutal game, and you are open to so many injury setbacks, and quite often they come when you're actually playing really well. But for me, I was pretty lucky, to be honest, Fletch. I didn't really get the really serious one. I mean, probably you look back now, I had some nasty concussions, and you have to obviously treat them so carefully. But I was really lucky that I escaped ACLs and broken bones and stuff. But I guess the most serious ones I had, my left knee, I ruptured my PCL, my medial ligament. I broke my ankle, a couple of broken fingers, I guess. But yeah, I was mostly pretty lucky, mate. I was able to get through without suffering too many major setbacks injury wise.
You are quite fortunate in that regard. Now, during your time at Adelaide, who do you think would have been some of your favourite players to watch from the coaching box?
Well, I must admit, my favourite player when I was playing for the Crows back in the day was Modra. He was my favourite. Everybody loved watching him. I don't know, he kicked, I think, 100 goals twice in a season. But then when I was coaching Adelaide, you can't have favourites as a coach, but obviously I really enjoyed working with guys like Taylor Walker, Rory Sloane, Paddy Dangerfield. They were the guys that you could really rely upon to get the job done for us. But yeah, I guess the other one that was so important for the Crows when I was coaching was Sam Jacobs. He was a ruckman that never missed. He played every game. He always played well. He was so reliable and sort of dependable. But I guess, and like I said, you can't get drawn into favourites, but we're pretty lucky to have a pretty gun midfield at my time at the Crows.
You are fortunate to be able to work with those fantastic players that you mentioned. Now, you, of course, unfortunately, being a senior coach, would have dealt with scrutiny and a lot of media attention. What was that like, and how did you deal with that?
Oh, it's part of the game, unfortunately, that you have to acknowledge, I guess, and just roll with. And it's one of those things where we're all drawn to football stories, and I mean, I love the footy season because every day it seems like there's a blockbuster story that comes out, or there's something that you just sort of find yourself catching your breath over. But footy is like that, and we are drawn to drama, I guess, when it comes to AFL. So you have to you can't have it both ways. You can't say, I love the AFL footy media, but then I don't like it when they report on me. But it's one of those things that you have to just learn to live with, and you have to work with the media. You have to ensure that you're not creating too many enemies, because the media always have the last word when it comes to any sort of arguments that you want to generate. But yeah, I've always had a great working relationship with the AFL media, and I think it's an integral part of the game.
Like you mentioned, it is an integral part of the game. Outside of football and sport, do you have any hobbies or an outlet that you can sort of break away from?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I like most people that love footy. I like all sports. I love American sport. I like baseball's my favourite. I'm obsessed with the Major League Baseball, and 162 games in a year, and there's games every day. It runs parallel with the AFL season. It starts the end of March and finishes at the end of September, the start of October. So I just love getting up each day and checking the baseball scores. And I obviously love when I go to the States, going to a game. But I also love the NFL. I like the NBA. I really enjoy watching the soccer in Europe. The Premier League's one of my favourite competitions to be immersed in during their season. So yeah, it's pretty much just sport, mate. That's probably the one thing that I find myself always drawn to. I enjoy having a hit of golf. I like tennis. So yeah, I guess sport's my hobby and my passion outside of footy.
You and I are quite similar in that regard. I also love sport as well. Thank you very much for joining me today on the Footy with Fletch podcast, Brenton. It's been great to talk to you.
No, that's fine, Fletch. Any time, mate. Good luck.
Thank you very much. So there you have it, Brenton Sanderson on the Footy with Fletch podcast.